At the bottom of every one of my videos, there's a vegan mission. It's something that you can do right now from your computer. Smash like, smash subscribe, and if you're able to, complete the mission in the description. Welcome. Today we're going to go through an interview or a debate between Carl Benjamin and, I gotta get this guy's name, Chris Hines. He's a dope-ass vegan. So he's good.
In fact, you called out vegetarians once, saying they were basically hypocrites.
Yes.
And that's no.
No.
Okay. So yeah, I'm kind of interested.
Sargon of Akkad, or Carl Benjamin, is a right-wing commentator. Let's say right-wing. I don't know if he'd agree with that or not, but I mean, certainly the left considers him right. And yeah, he's a pretty big figure, certainly on YouTube.
In your stance, obviously I'm a big animal rights activist.
Probably close to 1 million subs. Probably, maybe more, maybe less.
An advocate. I don't want to your kind of views on that is, and you know where you stand on bringing that into kind of political stance as well.
I think veganism is the most first world of concerns.
Question number 1. Do you think veganism is the most first world of first world concerns?
Okay.
Well, I think it's only possible when you live in a lap of luxury and you have a sort of, like think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you're at the very top.
I don't care about killing animals. I feel good about killing animals, so why should anyone else? This is obviously, Mr. Vegan Dude, you've obviously become fixated on this small issue that's not of any real concern, because I don't care about it, and you're making a huge deal out of this, and obviously you must have a lot of time in your hands, and you must have a lot of money, because it just doesn't concern me in any sort of way. That's Carl Benjamin's that's what he's really trying to say with this, I think.
The thing you're concerned about is not where your food, you know, whether you can eat, whether you've got housing, anything like that. You start worrying about moral socialization. And it's hard to make a moral case for killing eating an animal. Usually it's out of necessity. And
when it's out of necessity, it's a different situation entirely, isn't it? If you don't have any other food, you have the right to live. Everything has the right to live. If you have to kill something to live, then that justifies killing of that thing, even if it causes a lot of suffering or injustice to the thing that you're killing. The question is, if you're causing suffering or injustice, can you avoid doing it? Or if you're going to cause suffering or injustice, can you avoid doing that? And in the case of eating animals, we don't need the animals. We have plants, all the nutrients we can get from plants. So if we can get all the nutrients from plants, then we don't have to hurt and kill the animals who feel pain just like humans do, very close to how humans do. They have central nervous systems, they respond to it the same way. Like anytime if you've seen someone hurt an animal, like you can see that fucking sucks for that animal. We don't want to do that if we don't have to.
so it's not really fair to morally shame people for doing it because they do need food.
When it's out of necessity, of course not. Even myself, I'm a vegan, and if I was up north or something like that, I didn't have any food around, and I had no other choice, and I'm starving, like, I would kill an animal to eat the animal so I could live longer. For sure, I would do that. That's fine.
So you're saying you think veganism is expensive? Is that what you would say?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I completely disagree.
No, it's not that the act of eating something is not good is expensive, but to get to a position where this is a moral concern is expensive.
Yeah, I just don't care about it. Carl's saying, I just don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. We're eating animals. It's happening. You know, I'll go with the flow. Jesus. You goddamn vegans.
I have to live in the first world country.
I completely disagree.
For this to be a concern, you have to live in a first world country. Well, for this to be a concern, you have to have vegetables and fruits around you and access to them, for sure. I think that's what he's saying. Yeah, if you don't have a grocery store around you, if you don't have access to rice and beans, and like I said, the only thing around is that like animal going around like in your area, and you're gonna have to kill it to eat to survive, then yeah, that's true. That's fine.
Eating vegan is one of the cheapest things you can do. Let's see, yeah, beans.
We got beans.
What do you mean, sorry? Go on.
Oh, I think to buy vegan products for anyone, even if they are all low income, it's extremely easy. pasta, rice.
We got rice, we got
beans,
pasta,
fruits and
we got
vegetables.
beans, we got fruits, we got vegetables.
No, it's egg pasta. No, pasta. No, that's fine. No, there's no ones. It's fine. So yeah, it's completely cheap as well. But also, it's the first world problem. It's a problem for the animals. These animals are getting exploited, getting killed for completely unnecessary reasons. It's been shown by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics published their official stance on veganism and said that veganism is healthy for all stages of life. That's in all of my descriptions, my YouTube descriptions, a link to their official position. There's like 100,000 professional dietitians. I link also to The Lancet. The Lancet did an article. They have their position that vegan diets are completely healthy. If you have a well-balanced vegan diet, you can obviously eat like shit on a vegan diet, but if it's well-planned, you're totally in the clear. In fact, you're going to reduce risk of heart disease and other diabetes. That's why I went vegan in the first place, is because I actually got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and started to research this and found out that, oh, fuck, it's probably the animal products that are fucking me up.
Dietetics, we have no biological
Let's stop that, because the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, that doesn't exist in Africa, does it?
No, well, I mean, it's just a paper. It's just a thought that some people had. Some people came together and came up with this thought and wrote the paper down. I mean, the thought, does it exist anywhere? I don't know. Like, so in Africa, if you don't have any, I've been to Africa. I've been to West Africa. Their primary source of food, guess what it is? Take a wild guess what their primary source of calories is in West Africa. Question number 2. Take a wild guess at what the primary source of calories is in West Africa. It's beans and rice. The poorest countries in the world all eat beans, a shit ton of beans, and a shit ton of rice. It's the cheapest base food you can have. All animal products are harder to get than beans and rice are. But again, if you don't have anything else to eat, literally, you're going to die and you need to hunt to survive, then that's totally fine. Fucking hunt to survive, right? Or try and go somewhere where you don't have to hunt and survive, right? But if you have vegetables and fruits and rice and beans around, you should always eat that first, because it doesn't cause suffering or harm.
No, but it's basically the world's largest collection of nutritions and
But what I'm saying is, this is the product of a very advanced first world society. So it's not really fair to look at some, Indonesia or something and say, well, why aren't you guys like us? Because they're not like us. They're at a slightly less advanced stage of civilization. So, but I do agree that this is...
The moral question is everywhere, right? Let's say you were trying to get protein, okay? And you have a pile of beans in one hand. And then you have a knife in the other hand, and there's an animal running around. And you only need one serving of protein. You can cook and eat the beans, or you can chase the animal down with your knife, stab it, slit its throat, and start to dismember the animal and cook and eat the meat for the protein. Why would you do that? Why would you not just eat the beans? Right? It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you have the beans in your hand and a knife in the other, eat the beans. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper, and it's better for you.
An undeniable moral trajectory, and I think that in 100 years, people will be shocked that anyone ever ate an animal. And you're like, oh my god, how could you, barbarian? But it's really unfair to kind of like pathologize people and try to demoralize.
I don't know how you would see that as a moral trajectory and not be on board with that. It's confusing to me.
People who've just inherited this state of affairs, But I do think that like consumers will.
I will say this. I will say most non-vegans just have never heard these arguments before. These vegan arguments before. The same was definitely true of myself. When I was eating meat products, I never doubted that for a fucking second. Are you fucking kidding me? The vegans, I knew vegans existed, but I thought it was like a weird like health thing, I guess, or like a weird whatever. Like honestly, if I put myself back a few years, I went vegan in February 2018. If I put myself back when I was like a rampant meat eater, I don't even, if someone asked me like, why are vegans vegan? I'd be like, honestly, I don't know. I think, guess animal rights issue. I would love to interview myself. Somebody give me a time machine so I can interview myself when I was a meat eater. I know I just didn't think about these issues. I didn't think about animal rights, much like Carl Benjamin right now. He's probably from the position like, I don't ever think about this shit. Okay, someone's asking me these questions. It seems like they're pissed at me for some of these moral choices I've made, but I don't ever think about them, and I don't have to think about them, and I know I don't ever have to think about them, so I really don't think this is a moral concern. I really, really, really don't.
Humans will, I mean, I love oat milk. I absolutely love oat milk and hazelnut milk as well. I only discovered this recently because my wife went on a bit of a vegan kick. Okay. And she was, whining me a lot about stuff, and I was like, okay, I'll try something. And something was really nuts, But the thing is, I do have
Vegan shit's fucking dope.
also
It's really yummy. I love soy milk.
like animal products.
Oat milk is good too.
Okay,
So I think that
but you've always just agreed though that we don't need it, and we are in a first world situation where you should make that change.
Yeah, the question here, Carl, is are you gonna go vegan? Why aren't you going vegan? Not Africa, not Indonesia, not these weird situations where you need the food to survive. Why aren't you going vegan? Why are you choosing to continue to hurt animals when you could just choose not to and be just as healthy?
But the question is, do we consider animals worthy of that level of moral consideration?
Do we consider animals worthy of that level of moral consideration? Do we consider animals of the moral consideration where we don't murder them? Yes. Should you murder an innocent animal that does not want to die for no reason? No. Right? It doesn't matter if you're a meat eater or vegan. If I ask you the question, should you murder an animal needlessly? Should you murder an innocent animal needlessly if the animal does not want to die? No. Don't murder animals.
Well, I would
Unless you absolutely have to.
ask what is the traits present in animals that is present in humans would mean that we could do the same just to them. And I'd argue that doesn't exist.
I would say reciprocal moral values.
All right, so now we're doing this name the trait thing. The first I heard about name the trait was from this YouTuber, Ask Yourself. Brilliant guy. Check out his YouTube channel. It's Ask Yourself. And so it kind of goes like this. So meat eaters are okay with killing animals and turning them into hamburgers, but they're not okay with killing humans and turning them into hamburgers. So the question is, what's true of animals, which, if true of humans, would allow us to turn humans into hamburgers and that be morally acceptable, right? And for me, this is a very logical question to ask, which most don't have an answer to, right? Like Carl is saying here, the trait is reciprocal moral values. So if something can't reciprocate moral values, then it's okay to ignore its suffering and pain and do whatever the fuck we want to it, really, right? And for me, I just ask the question, are we causing suffering or pain? Are we causing suffering or injustice? If the answer is yes, then the next question is, can we avoid doing that? And if the answer is yes, then you should. If you can avoid causing suffering or injustice, you should. I don't give a shit about traits and blah, 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 blah. If you can avoid it, you should. So whether they can reciprocate moral values or not is relevant. Can they experience suffering or injustice? Yes. Okay. Can you avoid doing that? Yes. All right. Then do that. Then avoid it. Be vegan.
Reciprocal moral values. So what about a disabled person that can't reciprocate moral values? Would you say we could eat that?
I think they can reciprocate.
Eat the disabled.
Disabled person because that's their laws.
I think that's the right.
If a human couldn't, though, would you say we're being okay to eat and exploit?
No, because I think there's a different limiting principle that cannibalism, I mean, there's a practical reason. Cannibalism will give you what's curated, that makes you weird and twitchy. I mean, it's unhealthy for you to do it.
But it's unhealthy to do it.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Okay, this is an important part as well, actually, because I would argue that most meat eaters actually think that animal products are good for you. Most meat eaters think this, especially like the extreme ones that are like eat meat, eat fucking meat. There's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I'll eat whatever is around me. I don't really think about my diet too much. Like what's at the restaurant or what's in my fridge, right? But then there are like meat eaters, and the people that are in the middle, a lot of the time they haven't even seen any of this evidence that it's like really, really bad for you to eat animal products, and essentially it's cancer food. Certainly animal proteins, if you read like the China study or just do some research. I always have links in my descriptions that have all my health sources, so you can check that out below. But a lot of the, like Carl, for example, he probably hasn't even considered the fact that like animal products are really bad for you, right? And I know that this was my case before I went vegan. I thought that animal products are really good for you. So if someone is like, don't eat that, lean chicken breast, that's something I thought was like really good for me. If someone's like, don't eat that, it's really bad for you, I tell them go fuck yourself. So I understand this this position, which is why education is really important and getting it out there that it's really unhealthy. It's really important.
I don't think it is. But the thing is, the problem with the vegan argument is that there is actually no limiting principle in that. So, I mean, once we've said, right, okay, no one's going to eat animals anymore.
Right, no one's going to eat animals anymore because it causes immense suffering and injustice. Not an itsy beatsy bit of suffering or injustice. It causes immense suffering and injustice. You're killing a living animal, an innocent living animal that does not want to die needlessly. It's not good.
Why do we still eat plants?
We have to eat plants. We have to eat something. And also, if I had to pick between, like, you know, chopping up some broccoli and chopping up an animal, I'd rather chop up the broccoli. I think there's less suffering or injustice caused, and therefore I require less moral justification to do it. Question number 3. Do you think you need more moral justification to kill and eat animals or to kill and eat plants?
Plants, yeah, because they're not sentient.
Yeah, but they do.
Well, it's not because they're not sentient, it's because we need to eat something. You have the right to survive, right?
Feel pain.
No, they don't. Yes, no, they don't.
No, they don't. Yes, they do. No, they don't. Yes, they do.
I'll argue this to death with you. They do not feel pain.
Exactly.
Have you got to read them?
Also, it doesn't really matter if they feel pain, because I think we can all agree that broccolis, little sweet baby broccolis, feel less pain than little sweet baby cows or little sweet baby chicks or any other living non-human animal. They feel pain more than plants. So if you can thrive on plants, which you totally can, sources in the description, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, if you can thrive on plants without causing suffering or injustice to animals, you should. You probably should.
So you think plants feel pain?
No, they do suffer. They apparently have
No, they have no sexual nervous system, no brain. It's scientific.
Yeah, but that's a very privileged position, isn't it?
No, that's just science.
Now, listen, you don't need a central nervous system to suffer. You can suffer.
The amount of suffering is very important. The amount of suffering. Plants don't suffer all that much. Even if they do suffer, you're not going to argue that they suffer as much as an animal, right?
And prove to me that plants can feel pain.
If you let me, okay. I didn't say pain because they all suffer, but they can suffer. And there was an experiment done where literally they yelled at a plant every day, and they didn't
I'm a vegan. I'm offended at that.
yell at another plant as a control group, and the other plant flourished and this plant didn't. There is actually science to suggest that plants as living beings actually do suffer from the environment.
All right. So, I mean, on this point here, let's say you walk into a park and there's a beautiful flower in the middle of the park. Oh, so lovely, so lovely. Are you going to cut the plant down? Like, would you randomly cut the plant down? You don't need it. You don't need it for anything. It's just living there, right? Are you going to cut it down? Personally, I wouldn't cut that plant down. I would not cut that plant down. I would feel a little bit guilty if I didn't need to. Like, if I had a knife or like something and it was like, chop, like, I would feel pretty, I don't know, I wouldn't feel good about that. I'd just be like, hey, that's lame. Same thing with a tree. If there's just like a random tree, I'm not going to walk into a forest and just like chop down a tree. Like, if I need a firewood, great. Or like, you know, I'm in a park and just like, oh, I'll cut down this tree. No, I wouldn't do that unless I needed to do it. But the only point I'm trying to make is, like, even a plant, I'm not about needlessly killing anything, right? At the same time, I don't have any moral problem with eating my vegetables, right? I know I've killed plants to eat vegetables, but I have to survive. And the amount of suffering and injustice I've caused to these plants is so minimal, right? There's nothing morally wrong with cutting that flower down in the middle of a park. If there's an open park and there's a flower there, you cut it down. It's not really experiencing suffering or injustice. A little bit, sure, but it's so small that it's not, you know, I'm not really going to lose sleep on it, other than, like, maybe I'll be like, why are you such a weirdo cutting down random plants that you don't need to cut down, right? But you get it.
I would say that's reacting to external stimuli. In the same way that a barometer reacts to...
Everyone's reacting to
Our pressure. We have sentience. We can perceive the world.
Well,
we can
animals
feel.
aren't sentient.
They are sentient.
No, no.
Prove it.
No, they are. Yes, they are.
Because they can't think.
You can also can think.
No, they can't. They can only think.
Yes, they can. No, they can.
They don't have language.
The Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness
Cambridge.
completely states by each scientist that animals are sentient or conscious.
I don't
When
they're
scientists.
sentient. They're conscious.
You'll need to prove it.
Well, yeah, but they don't have a language. How could they possibly think?
Well, then, like some humans that have a language, like
They don't
elephants
have the
people.
ability to speak. It doesn't mean that they
I don't know. All this stuff is I'm just focused on someone trying to so the moral question is, are we causing suffering or injustice, significant suffering or injustice to animals? If yes, stop doing it. Can we stop doing it? I don't know what they're talking about right now.
Because to be disabled,
Okay, you can't prove or disprove that
You can't have a thought that doesn't involve language.
say
You
someone
can't do it.
It's more simple than this, guys. It's more simple than this.
they can't think, but they don't have the ability to speak.
Some animals, no. And now this goes into what is language and what is just other methods of communication.
So relevant. So relevant. whether there's language and animals can talk and plants can talk and have a language and the mushrooms through the trees and can communicate and blah, 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 blah. Are you causing suffering or injustice? Can you avoid it? That's it. When you kill an animal for food, are you causing suffering or injustice? Yes, and it's significant. It's terrible. It's terrible. Watch some of this footage that I'm putting on the screen. Does this look like a little bit of suffering and injustice? Does this just look like a smidgen? Does this look like cutting off a broccoli? Is this cutting up a broccoli? Or is this significant suffering or injustice? If this is significant suffering or injustice, the next question you should ask is, can I stop? Can I stop it? Is there a way to stop it? If the answer is yes, you should. You should stop doing this stuff. Stop it.
Yeah, it is actually a very complex subject, but the thing is, everything that vegans say.
If you're driving down a road and there's a little tiny baby chick walking out in front of the road, or a little baby turtle, and you have tons of room to stop or swerve out of the way, safely swerve at a safe speed, do you swerve or do you ram it the fuck over? Personally, I would swerve. I would stop. And I think most people would too. Right? If you can prevent suffering or injustice, you should.
Animals will also be argued to be true about plants, and so really it's just about how you feel about it.
No, because I say that the big difference between plants and animals is sentience. Plants are intelligent beings. They're alive, obviously.
Big difference between plant and animals. In my opinion, the only thing that matters in relation to this discussion is that animals are capable of experiencing more suffering or injustice. That's it. Significantly more suffering and injustice. Just like a human has the ability to experience more suffering or injustice than a broccoli does. Right? Animals also have significantly higher capacity to experience suffering and injustice than a broccoli does. So we have to be more careful of how we treat the humans and the animals.
Well, they do. They're intelligent in the same way that they can react to external stimuli.
The intelligence, the language, it's irrelevant because we all know that animals and humans can experience more pain and suffering than plants can. That's it.
Like for example,
That's not intelligence. What would you class intelligence? Well, intelligence is cognitive ability.
it's intelligent enough to pick up on, say, particles in the air or something and react to that.
I don't think that's
Which a calculator can do, or a barometer or a microwave. But we don't say that microwaves are intelligent. Try and give them rights and say we can't.
Exactly, but that's the thing. Well, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. Anything you say about animals will also be able to be said about plants with enough.
No. Has a central nervous system. Anything you say about animals, okay? Animals have a central nervous system. We will eventually say about plants, no.
Study and enough detail.
Plants will never experience pain in the way that animals experience pain.
Yeah, but there's no evidence of plant sentience.
I didn't say sentience.
But I mean, if they're not sentient and they can't feel or perceive, then why would they have moral value? And why would we worry about
But
that?
this is it. What you consider to be feeling, I think people will. They will argue and be able to demonstrate that plants also suffer. So
We will be able to more accurately describe the experience of plants as we develop science further. Yes.
argument you make about suffering for the animal will also be able to be made about the plant, and so eventually
They can prove
No. No one will. I think Carl is trying to say that we will eventually prove that plants experience the same suffering that animals do, and he just hasn't thought the argument through.
which is
they will do.
They will not do. They will not do. Plants will never have a central nervous system. Doesn't matter how good science gets. Won't happen.
And honestly, I think that everything I'm saying hinges on the idea that that's not true. But obviously, I don't
Okay,
have
well,
any
let's
studies.
say you're wrong.
Obviously, I don't have any of the studies in front of me, so let's just assume that I have read this.
Okay, well let's assume that you're right and the plants have feelings. For one, moving to a plant-based diet would actually reduce plant deaths due to the amount of plants we're feeding to animals.
I'm okay with that. Yes. I'm okay with that.
Secondly, we actually require plants in our diets to survive. Therefore, we have the participation of necessity and survival, which we don't have with animals.
So you can
So moving to a vegan diet would save plants as well as animals.
you can survive on an all-meat diet or a 90% meat diet.
That hasn't
Just because you can survive on something does not mean that you should. For example, you can survive on an all-meat diet for a period of time. It's not healthy for you. That's for sure true. You can survive 100% off of theft, right? You can steal all your money. It doesn't mean that you should. It doesn't mean that that's a way to move forward or a moral reasoning to do that thing.
It's not really been proven. There's no carnivore diets out there and stuff. There haven't been enough studies to show that that's
There are
the case.
people living on it right now.
Jordan Peterson is a well-intelligent man, but not when it comes to veganism.
Well, I'm arguing about this.
Having a case of healing, myself included, because I healed myself going on a vegan diet. So that one case cancels out your case, miss. What's important is the studies. If you go to the science and go to the links in the description, you will see parts of it, and also the YouTube channel, nutritionfacts.org, or Mike the Vegan, and others. There is a huge amount of scientific evidence to support veganism will thrive. Oh, and there's a documentary, lots of documentaries, again, links in the description, and a new one coming out called Game Changers. Go check it out. It's produced by James Cameron, and Arnold's in it, and Jackie Chan, and Jackie Chan helped produce it, and that's coming out September 16th. So check that one out. That's about all the same shit.
But that's the problem. Like,
You know, some animals, plants grow feds to animals, so you actually reduce death.
I think you're looking for a categorical moral right here when it comes to veganism.
Yes, for sure. There is a categorical moral right. There is 100% a categorical moral right. And this is kind of interesting that, you know, that I'm taking such a stance like this, saying what someone should or shouldn't do with their life, right? But I agree with the statement. I can't help it, but I agree with the statement. If you can avoid causing great suffering or injustice, you should. I agree. I agree with that statement, right? And so I think everyone else should agree with that statement. If you can avoid causing suffering or injustice, you should. The question is, can you thrive on plants? Yes, you can. So you should, because it avoids causing immense suffering or injustice.
And I don't think one exists. But I don't think it's categorical moral wrong either, or to eat animals. It really is depending on...
It's not a categorical moral wrong to eat animals, right? If you have nothing else to eat, you can eat animals, for sure. And that's morally, totally, and ethically fine, right? But he's using this as, aha, it's not categorically wrong to eat animals, so I should be able to eat animals whenever the fuck I want. But that's not the conclusion of that statement.
how you feel about defining these terms.
Well, if you look at the definition of veganism, it's basically to, you know,
It's interesting because everyone agrees with that moral statement. If you can avoid causing suffering or injustice, you should. Almost everyone agrees with that statement. Meat eater, even the most strict carnivores would agree with that statement. So they're doing this mental gymnastics to get around it somehow to justify eating animals, and it's just it's interesting to watch.
eliminate,
Okay, we've got a barbecue
I'll
fan.
debate you after.
He'll do it.
I'm cool. Yeah, it's basically to eliminate exploitation and death to animals where possible and
Where possible and practical.
That is the actual definition. It's not about perfection. We all know that it's impossible. I walk on the floor, I can step on a pig or whatever.
Exactly.
But the elimination of animal foods in our general diets for people like me and you is completely possible, and it's completely practical.
It is. It's possible and practical. So if we can do it, we should.
I like animal foods.
But I like animal foods, though. Ugh. So who cares about the suffering or injustice that I'm causing? And I don't know what exactly his line of thinking is. It might just be, I like animal foods, though, and I'm so morally okay with it now that that's just going to be my next reason.
But is taste a justification to take a life?
Yes.
Ugh. Ugh.
No, it would say if I find this man here tasty, I'm allowed to eat him.
They're not delicious.
No, because he's a human.
Aha, because he's a human. Aha. That's why we can't eat him. Never mind that the animal is experiencing terrible, terrible suffering, and that we have all the nutrients around us. It is totally needless to hurt the animal. We have all the nutrients around it. There's plenty of delicious vegan meals, but I kind of like the taste, though, and I'm okay with paying someone else to do it. I don't have to do the killing. I can just pay someone else to do it. I don't have to see it. I can be so far away from it that actually by the time I get the product, it has a picture of a happy cow on the front of it. That they were actually happy with the trade.
Okay, but what's the difference between a human and an animal? That if the animal possessed that trait, or the other way around, would mean it's okay to eat it?
Yeah, it's called human privilege.
Called human privilege.
Yes.
So
That's kind of terrible. Like, that's a terrible thing to say, right? Like, it's a human privilege, so we can cause whatever pain and suffering we want needlessly. As long as it benefits us, we can do whatever we want. That's how we build it. Essentially what he's saying is this is how our society is currently. Currently, our society is we can cause whatever pain and suffering we want to animals, and we don't really have to question that. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Humans have rights, animals have rights, but these are not the same rights, and we give different forms of moral consideration to each group.
For sure, there are different forms of moral consideration to each group. We do not give the same level of moral consideration to animals, and that's fine. You just need them to have, here's the moral consideration for killing, right? Are animals above or below, right? Animals, they experience suffering and injustice, so I just put them above the line. Here's moral consideration to avoid killing. So they have more moral consideration, so we shouldn't kill them. Humans for sure are way higher. They're way, way higher, right? And then animals, and then there's things below this line for which we can kill, like I don't know, like a mosquito on your arm or something like that. They carry disease and stuff like that. I swat a mosquito, right? It experiences suffering and injustice as well. But it's not the same level as a dog, and it's not the same level as like a chicken or these other non-human animals.
Okay,
So we even do it with delineating between types of animals.
okay, so let's take someone outside of you.
For sure, yeah, they're different animals require or have different moral consideration, in my opinion, for sure, like I just described.
Humanity.
That doesn't mean that we get to ruthlessly do whatever the fuck we want to everyone non-human, because there's the line, and if you're above the line, then you don't like kill, right? If this is the moral consideration for killing line.
Let's say an alien came down and wanted to eat you. He didn't need to. That would be fun.
Well, it depends on whether we consider them persons.
No, it doesn't. It's just a silly answer. If there's an alien that comes down, if aliens come down, do I want them to eat me and kill me? No. Do I want them to needlessly stab me in the neck just to see what I taste like? No. I don't want them to do any of that stuff. For sure, no.
It was
Why?
personhood.
Yeah, personhood's a very interesting concept. I mean, like, some animals are basically considered persons.
I mean, there's a river that's classed as a person as well.
Is
though.
there?
Yeah, yeah.
That's very interesting.
People trying to get for like buildings and stuff. Anyway.
That's hilarious. That's great. But that's the thing. I mean, like, if these aliens look like cows, then maybe we would eat. You know, if they look like people, we probably
Or would
would.
it be just
If aliens come down, okay, if aliens come down, this group of aliens come down, and they look like whatever, insert random traits here, okay? Are you gonna think, okay, I wonder what they taste like? Or let's say their blood was shown to have like incredibly high levels of calcium, okay? Would you think, I wonder how I can farm, I want to take a few of these aliens aside, I want to farm them, and imprison them and murder them and drink all their blood because it's high in calcium? Or would you just go to another source of calcium that you already have, a plant-based source of calcium, right? Like, why would the thought go to killing and eating this like new life form? Wouldn't you be like, okay, sweet, like we got to learn from these people, like how did they get here, like to exchange ideas, like to exchange culture, like let's whatever, if safe, I don't know. But why would your thought go to what parts of their body can we consume? That just seems so weird to me.
justified, morally justified?
And it wouldn't be morally, if they can experience pain and suffering, why would we cause pain and suffering needlessly? You know, like maybe if we were a dying species, like humans were dying, and they had something very special in their blood, as it turned out, that like we absolutely needed to drink their blood to survive, that's kind of a different story. But if we're doing fine and we're thriving without causing suffering and injustice to this life form, then why would we cause suffering and injustice to it?
To do.
I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. We need a bit more information.
But I mean, is there really a moral justification to take the life of an animal when we have alternatives available to us?
Well, it really depends. I mean, some, like, I'm gonna have to take a look.
Now he's put the question like I like to hear the question, which is, if we've got the nutrients around, how are we justified of taking the life of an animal? Let's see what he says.
An animal here.
So rescue it, let it go in my hand. We'll set it free, we'll set it free.
There we go.
Let's keep it peaceful.
Okay, so now the burger. But no, again, it depends on the moral consideration you give animals, and I don't think we give all animals the same kind of moral consideration. I just
Right. We don't give them the same moral consideration, but do we give them enough consideration not to murder them? In all cases, non-human animals, certainly all farmed animals, answer is yes.
that bug, you know,
Don't kill them.
no one cares.
I think rights and obligations should be mentioned.
Well,
You can-
I did say reciprocal moral understanding. because
yeah,
I think
which
that
you
is-
can't. So as humans,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like, for example, you can never have this kind of pact with a lion, you know. So you have to understand that if a lion's coming at you, you've got to shoot them. And
Yeah. That's not farming lions. Like, you have a right to defend yourself. If a lion's coming at you, or a dog's coming at you, or any sort of like eagles coming at you, or I don't know, some crazy situation, yeah, you have the right to defend yourself. Absolutely. That doesn't mean you get to, in one situation, that doesn't mean that because there's one situation where it's justified to cause violence or suffering and injustice to an animal, all situations of causing violence or injustice to an animal are now morally allowed. Nope.
You may as well eat
Of
lions.
course. I mean, no! Self-defense and you need to kill the lion, then fair enough. The thing is, we're not in that situation. We're in a situation where we can quite easily go to Tesco and pick something else off the shelf and save a pig from being factory
Yep.
cleaned.
Yeah, but if people want to eat a pig, there's no reason that your morality should supersede theirs on that issue.
Yeah, we just talked about it. It's interesting. It's interesting. It causes, and the reason is this, it causes suffering or injustice to that pig. And there's another option available that's just as accessible. So you should do that. You should not cause suffering or injustice needlessly to the pig, and you should pick the option that avoids causing suffering or injustice to it. It's easy.
I would say that human rights are a natural extension of human rights. So I would say that animal rights are a natural extension of human rights because there is no trait so equally that animals possess if you transfer to a human right, justify the harm and the harm. I say that doesn't exist.
I think the fact that we are talking about other humans, there's really no self-interest there. We don't want to be eaten by a fellow man. Yeah, but I do think that the sort of the cause of sentience is an important thing. So I don't agree that animals are sentient in the way that humans are.
They're not. Animals are not sentient in a way that humans are. That's fine.
I know, I would totally agree there is a sentience hierarchy to say. Like, obviously, a fly is not going to have as much moral value as a human or a dog, for example. Yeah, so it does, there is a scale, but what we should give them is a basic right to not be harmed if it's unnecessary.
Exactly. Don't harm shit if it's unnecessary.
So, no matter what it is, in this case.
Take a look at some of these images or videos and tell me if you think this is the same as cutting down a plant, right? I don't think so. We require much more reasoning to do stuff like this than we do to cut down a plant, right? So talking about this scale, yes, plants are still on the scale. Like, I don't want to randomly kill plants or trees either, but animals are much, much higher. Every animal that we eat or any secretions from animals that we consume are cause much more suffering and injustice than when we kill plants.
But like again, if you're farming animals for food, and I agree that we should give them good. I mean, I hate the battery farming. I hate that kind of stuff. I would rather pay more for meat and eat meat less regularly if the animals are free range and happy and healthy.
Free range, happy and healthy is a myth. It's a lie. Watch Dominion. Go to watchdominion.com. It is a lie. It is a lie. Lying.
Until we butcher them,
Until we slit their throat. Slibbity bip.
Yeah, but even a free-range animal is still going to go to the same slaughterhouse in the end. They get a bolt gun in the head or...
Oh yeah, but otherwise that animal wouldn't exist, would it?
But
Otherwise that animal wouldn't exist, would it? So I guess he's saying we've done a good thing because we've allowed it to exist. So we're farming it. We've done a good thing. We've allowed it to exist. So let's just focus on that. Let's just focus that we've given it the experience of life, which I admit is a good thing. And let's not worry about the killing of the animal. That can be used to justify a lot of really terrible things, like some like sex workshop things where you raise kids to do sex things, and or some slavery stuff, where you just like have slaves and then make more slaves out of those slaves and torture them and do whatever the fuck you want to them, and then say, well, we gave them life. They wouldn't have life without us, so we're morally justified to do this thing. Oh.
I mean, that's saying that we could bring a human up or a dog up and say, well, that was the reason we brought up, therefore let's kill them. That wouldn't be a good reason, no.
Humans aren't just animals. Humans are something special to
Well,
us.
we are animals, really, yeah.
I'm not saying biologically,
Yeah.
I mean philosophically.
Yeah.
Humans are not just animals, and there is something more to a human that distinguishes them from an animal.
For sure. For sure there is. But both of them deserve the right not to be needlessly murdered. Everyone watching this video agrees that don't needlessly murder your friend's dog. It has enough moral consideration. It's not because it belongs to your friend, right? It's because it's a dog.
But that's the argument done.
No, not really, because again, it doesn't matter where on the sentience hierarchy, we should still give them a basic right to no exploitation and harm when it's unnecessary. I don't think eating animals is necessary. When we don't need it biologically, we have alternatives available to us, so why are we doing it?
Exactly. If we don't need to do it. There are alternatives available. Why are we doing it? The only other thing I would add in there is that it's causing significant suffering and injustice.
I'm not sure that we don't need it biologically, but I don't agree.
Right. If you believe that you require the nutrients, it's kind of like the vegan argument kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't agree we are exploiting animals. Well, here's the trait for exploiting animals. Would they choose to do it? And are they a willing participant in this deal? You might argue like a dog, like if someone owns a dog and they treat and train the dog really well, that dog is like really happy and like living an actually like happy life. And it's like, okay, and the owner is genuinely concerned about this dog's well-being and this dog's happiness. And they buy him treats and toys, and they're generally looking out and considering things from the dog's point of view, right? This is a mutually beneficial situation in most cases, right? But in the case of exploiting animals, I don't agree we're exploiting animals like for dairy, let's say. Do you think that mother cow wants to give you its milk instead of giving it to the calf? Is that what you think is going on? No, that's exploitation. We're exploiting it. We're stealing things from it. Doesn't want to be in that situation. Doesn't want to be killed for your meat after 4 years when it stops producing milk. It doesn't want to give you your milk. It wants to give the calf the milk. And we steal its calf away. We steal the babies away from the mother cows. Do they want that? Is that what they want? If they don't want that, we're exploiting them.
I agree that we are exploiting animals. I don't think the animals understand what exploitation is.
You don't have to understand what it is to be suffering from it.
You don't think so? You don't think the animals in these farms know that they're living in hell?
Well, in these ones, they undoubtedly understand they're living in hell. Right. But like, if you've got a free-range pig who's wandering around the field, he's not going to say that he's exploiting if he suddenly gave the ability to.
But he will when he ends up in a gas chamber in the suicides.
A gas chamber.
Yeah. He will when he's on the killing floor, that's for sure. As we all would, right? If we were you know, raised in some sort of farm, and then we realize some sort of farm, and then we were given everything we needed and like things to play in, whatever, and then on the day of our death we realized that it was all to keep us distracted because we're going to be killed and used for meat. It's like, fuck no, don't fucking kill me and eat me. This is what this thing is about. That's fucked up, man. Don't do that shit. And they do put pigs in gas chambers. That's considered the like humane way to do it. I've got links in my description.
Do you know, most pigs are put into gas chambers, so that's the most common way of killing them. Just, you know, I run an animal rights organisation. I've also done undercover investigation. Right. I've seen all these things firsthand.
Well, I mean, I would like to see the help to account if they're making animals suffer.
If they're making animals suffer. Links in my description, like 1,000 links in my description. Are these animals suffering? So he might be under the impression, which is actually, I should listen to this. I should listen to this because he might be under the impression that, you know, the animal products that he's consuming and the milk he's drinking all has a happy cow on it. He might be so far removed from everything that he might actually think that the animals are not really suffering on the farms. That might actually be his belief. If that's his belief, then again, the vegan argument doesn't really make that much sense. Right? Because if the animals are happy, you know, and they're happily walking to get their throats cut to be turned into meat, it's like, I guess if animals do that, if that's just like the natural thing of animals that they do, I guess, but that's not what's happening. Have a look at some of these clips. That's not what's happening.
And any way of butchering the animals should be as quick and painless as possible. But I don't agree that the animals have the same kind of rights as humans in regards to.
No one's arguing that. You're arguing against a straw man.
Being exploited. I just don't agree with that.
No one's making that statement. He's defending it now, right? So now he's defending it as if that was his position, but that was never his position. But I understand he's debating a pretty big name. I would be nervous as fuck if I was debating Sargon, and I would mess up way more than Chris is. He's done an amazing job. I'm just going to double check his name here. Yeah, Chris. So sorry, Chris.
Yeah, to exploit someone, you have to be essentially fooling them, and animals don't have.
Yes.
That's really dangerous. They've been brought up into a world.
They're being fooled.
They don't have the cognitive ability to be able to understand this concept.
That's the same way as a baby doesn't know either.
But a baby's a human.
Yeah, but a baby doesn't know.
So he's like, you can't exploit a human because it doesn't understand exploitation. And then Chris is like, well, you could exploit like a baby. And then Sargon, well, baby's not a human. Baby's a human. It's not an animal. It's like, oh, that's a different argument entirely. Stay on track. Stay on track.
We wouldn't eat the baby. We wouldn't exploit the baby.
But if a baby is a human,
difference?
and an animal is not.
But what's the difference? What is the trait?
Cognitive ability. And I would say biological reality.
Animals have cognitive.
No, they don't have.
See, see this game? This game is silly. Like, what's the trait? What's the ability? And then the Carnus is going to say cognitive ability or moral reciprocation, whatever. It's, does the animal experience significant suffering or injustice? If it does, can we avoid it? If you can, you should.
The same ability as humans. We expect
Animals as intelligent as a 3-year-old child. Therefore, a pig. Like, yeah,
I don't agree. I don't
you
agree.
know, that's just science. You can't not agree. It's just science.
You cannot agree with science, whether that's a smart thing to do or not. I don't know.
3-year-old children speaking things. Pigs don't have a language.
The pigs are more. That's just science. You can't-
They have slightly better cognitive ability in some. They have better short-term memory.
But that's not the same thing.
But then take a 3-year-old child. Let's go to a 1-year-old child.
It doesn't matter because anything that we classify as human is, by the way we classify it philosophically, not an animal. And so
So it's just saying, it's just argument. If it's human, we care about its suffering and justice. If it's not human, we don't care about its suffering and justice. And we can exploit it when we want to. And that's just a really bad
it
argument.
doesn't matter what age it is and what the ability of the human is. It is a human. It is part of our moral community as a human.
Of course. So then,
What are we talking about?
because why are they outside our moral
Because they're
consideration?
not human. And they're not entirely outside of
But they're not, again, I'm saying, if an alien came down and said, would you be okay with the same excuse? You would not be okay with that excuse.
It depends on the alien.
Okay, so if an
Hey, we wouldn't. If aliens come down and say, we're going to eat everybody, you would not be like, okay, great, that sounds good. Or if an alien comes down and is like, I'm gonna slice your throat, you would not be like, oh, okay, that's totally fine. Like, you want to taste me? That's great. No, you wouldn't be okay with that. You wouldn't be okay. So why are we using that as a justification to hurt animals?
alien came down and said, I'm going to eat you, no necessity, no biological need, and I'm going to factory farm humans, and it's because you're not part of our
Yeah, if they're like, we're going to factory farm all you humans because you're not alien, you're not part of our alienality, you wouldn't say, okay, that's fine. You don't need us. You're causing a shit ton of suffering and injustice to us. It's completely needless, but you're just going to do that. So, okay, I guess that's fine. You wouldn't say that. You'd be like, that's totally fucked up. You don't need to do this. Stop doing it.
alienality, you would agree to that. Of course you wouldn't.
Well, no, because I'm intelligent enough to be understanding of what's happening.
So look, you just wouldn't agree to it, therefore you're using the same excuse.
I don't think we need to give animals the same moral consideration.
We don't. We don't need to give animals the same moral consideration we give to humans. We don't need to give plants the same moral consideration we give to animals either, right? The question is, do we cause extreme suffering and injustice? If we do, try and avoid it, right?
To humans, I just don't agree with that.
But you haven't given a valid reason why, because you've already...
Because they're not human, they don't have the same
Okay,
cognitive
so
ability.
again, is that...
Chris just needs to agree to that and be like, yeah, we don't give animals the same moral consideration. Absolutely.
Same rights as
So if the species came, it wasn't human,
We don't give an animal a court hearing, you know, when they like bite someone or do something bad. And it's not like, okay, go to court. You don't get to like get a jury of your peers, you know, like it's not the same rights. We're not arguing for animals to have the same rights as humans. We're just arguing that animals have enough rights and enough moral consideration to not be needlessly murdered, to not have suffering and injustice inflicted upon them needlessly. You know this about a dog. You would never cause suffering and injustice needlessly to a dog because you realize that it's above that threshold. It's above the moral threshold.
to you for exactly the same reasons, would you be okay with it? If not, you play the double standard.
Yes, it is. It's a complete double standard. It's
Okay.
exactly right. It would be equal to us humans. We hold humans in a privileged position for being human.
Yeah, so you're in the same situations, you're holding a double standard.
Yeah, okay.
For animals as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm oppressing the animals, yes.
Okay.
Stop doing that. Don't oppress the animals. Jesus. Why would you do that? Why would you cause suffering or injustice needlessly to creatures? Don't do that.
They can live with it.
Oh.
But they don't live with it, they die.
I'll tell you what,
This is the thing, they die.
I'll tell you what, they can write a letter to the Empress.
Oh. That's really gross. That's just like, let's totally ignore. I mean, it's come out, right? The truth has come out, which is I've never thought about animal rights. I've never thought about their suffering and injustice. Everything you said kind of makes sense. They are experiencing a lot of suffering and injustice. It makes sense that I can get alternate sources. I'm not going to. They can fuck off. I'm going to fucking keep killing them.
But that's the thing, you're trying to give moral consideration for creatures that simply don't understand the things you're talking
They don't have to understand moral consideration to be given moral consideration. Dogs, pets, they don't understand moral consideration, but we know we should give it to them.
The way that other humans do. It's just not
Again, disabled humans do not
it's
understand.
human.
But they don't understand, and we've already discussed the human
But
thing.
it's yeah, but I know, but you don't seem to be listening. Yeah, but you're not listening. Humans have a privileged position in human society.
Yeah, of course.
That we will not extend to animals.
So humans have, yes, humans have more moral consideration. We're never going to extend the same moral consideration to animals. I agree.
Yeah, but why?
Because they're not humans.
Well, that's fine. You don't, Chris, just agree. It's true. They don't get the same moral consideration, for sure.
That's what makes it human privilege.
Yeah, but we're just doing.
Yes.
Okay, but there's no reason that we can't extend it out. If we wanted to, right?
You don't have to extend all of it, and that's kind of, see, Carl thinks that you're implying that we should extend all of our moral privilege, all of our human privilege out to animals. We just need to give them enough moral consideration not to kill them.
Animal can never give you reciprocal consideration in that regard.
But why do we necessarily need it? Again, there are humans that can't give us reciprocal things. We can't do it. Why can't we open that circle out to other living beings?
Open the circle up!
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah, but why would we?
Well, just don't cause suffering
Because
or injustice when you don't need to. That's it.
Living, breathing beings that don't want to be killed for something that's not necessary.
Yeah, but you don't know that.
Which part does he not know? Let's see what he said here. They are living, breathing beings that don't want to be killed. They're living, I don't think there's any argument there. Breathing beings, yes, that don't want to be killed. Do you think, okay, I've had this come up before actually when I was doing some outreach. So someone's like, how do you know they don't want to die? Well, put an animal, any animal you want in a room, put you in the room too, and go and try and kill that animal. And see, you can use a tool, you can use like a knife or something like that. But try and use your hands just to start, just to try and make my point. Let's just use our hands, okay? So put a dog in the room, and then you're going to go up to the dog, and you're going to start trying to kill the dog. Do you think the dog is going to be like, sweet, man, I'll roll over here. Can I expose my neck? Here, let me expose my neck. I think this is going to make your life easier. Let me think about you, human. You want to kill me, so I'll just make this easier for you. Or do you think the dog is going to start showing some teeth and start getting really fucking feisty and start biting you and start doing everything it can to survive? What do you think? Now pick another animal. Doesn't matter what animal you pick. Start threatening the animal. They have a defense mechanism to prolong their life. All animals instinctively want to protect their life. They want to live. They do not want to die. They do not want to die for you. They do not say, okay, sure, you want. I love you, human. I love you. Kill me.
Of course we know.
You're just assuming.
It's,
How am I assuming it?
You don't know.
Have you ever seen animals in slaughterhouses? Do you think they willingly want to get bolted in the head? Straw man, right?
That's not strawberry.
We're not talking about fast fashion, but we can have a shit as well.
Look, we can't make humans animals.
he's really fixated. So I think he's really fixated now that it's like, aha, I know in my brain, we can't give same moral consideration to animals that we give to humans. So that's going to be my argument moving forward. And which Chris needs to just accept and be like, yeah, we don't need to give them the same moral consideration to morally not need to kill them.
Humans, and that's what you're effectively asking. You're effectively asking to create persons out of things that don't understand.
See, he's fixated on this argument where he's just assumed that Chris's position is, oh, Chris, you want to make humans and animals the exact same. Well, guess what? They're not. Right? That's a straw man. That's not Chris's position. But Chris needs to clear that up.
I'm asking for other living beings to have a basic right to non-exploitation, and we think that it's not necessary.
You're actually asking for the genocide of all of these things because they won't exist. All of these, no,
They're 100% exist.
these are domesticated animals. They are the products of human beings. When we say we're no longer going to eat meat, they won't stop doing that.
So, I guess the argument is, well, if we went vegan tomorrow, they would all die, and so we better keep growing them into slavery and murdering them for food, so that we don't accidentally kill them all, right? And of course, this would never happen. It would be a slow, transformation into veganism, and slowly more and more farms would be getting less and less money because more and more people are going vegan. And then these animals would either be going to sanctuaries or would die out their natural life cycle. We don't need to continue growing them and to be murdered. And you certainly can't use that as justification, because you could use the same thing with, like, if you had a group of slaves. You could say, well, if we don't have no use for slaves anymore, then what are we going to do with all these slaves? Better keep slaving.
Okay, this is against the argument. Okay, but the originals of those, like I said, they're domesticated, of course, which means they never existed in the first place. Like, there is no such thing as a wild Jersey cow, there's no such thing as a chicken. But if they all went, for a start, there would still be people like sanctuaries and stuff that would have them. But the originals of those animals would still exist. The red jungle fowl for chickens, but
they still exist now.
for cows. They do. So if the elimination of domestic species did go extinct, the original animals are still there. It's like arguing Frankenstein's monster came into existence, so now do we have a moral obligation to keep him alive because now he exists?
Well, no, listen, I don't think you're listening. Like, I agree that, like, we shouldn't harm.
I agree that we shouldn't harm animals, and this is like, I find this so interesting, so interesting. I agree we shouldn't harm animals. I think I could even add a word. Carl, pardon me for doing this, but I think I could add a word in there, and you'd still be okay with it. I agree that we shouldn't needlessly harm innocent animals. I think you'd be okay with those two words in there. Let's see what he's about to say next. I do too. I agree with that too.
Animals. Yeah, but I don't agree.
But I don't agree that the domestication of animals is exploitation. You're uninformed.
The domestication of animals is exploitation because that is inherently negative.
It is inherently negative and demeaning. It is. Do you think this is negative and demeaning? I do. Yes, I do.
Demeaning thing, and I don't
I want it to stop very badly.
agree that just having animals as domestic animals is
Straw man. Having animals as domestic animals is a form of exploitation. Not all animals, not all domestic animals is a form of exploitation. You have pets where you're looking out for their well-being, caring for them, paying their vet bills, really taking care of them. It's the exact opposite of exploitation. That's a domestic animal.
is a form of exploitation.
It's a straw man.
Even if we're using them for products, I don't agree.
If we're using them for products, that's exploitation. That's 100% exploitation. Trust me. No cow wants to give you their leather, their skin. No furs are given voluntarily by an animal. Trust me. Do you have any spare ribs? Do you have any body parts that you would voluntarily like to give up for someone else to use and give you nothing in return? Literally nothing in return? What about your eyes? Would you give up an eye to somebody who's not going to pay you anything and just like say, fuck you, I'm taking your eye or your skin or your hair or your feet or something like that? Like, come on.
So I believe that forcing an animal into existence for our own use is not exploitation.
No, because an animal.
An animal doesn't understand it. You can't exploit something that doesn't understand exploitation. Yeah, you can. You can.
Doesn't understand what you're talking about.
It doesn't matter if it understands.
It doesn't.
Like you said, I don't want to go down circles with these, but you know where we're going to go.
No, I think exploitation is a form of coercion, I would say. I mean, there's no real reason to think that you can coerce an animal because
You don't have to coerce. You don't have to coerce an animal. You can just force it. Just force it, which is what happens in farming.
again, they just can't think of these concepts in that. Like, it's like saying that we're coercing.
It's like you can't explain pain to an animal. And since you can't explain pain to an animal, and an animal, you know, can't explain it back to you, it can't, by definition, can't experience pain. When you understand why that argument is flawed, you'll understand why the argument of exploitation is flawed.
Plants by making them grow in a certain spot when we're throwing the seeds.
So we're going to argue about they have a lack of sentience and they're not aware.
Well, who gives a shit? We are exploiting plants. We're like, that's not what they want. They don't want to be grown and eaten. Not that they really want anything. They just are plants. So, kind of, again, who gives a shit? I mean, I don't want to needlessly kill plants or any animals or anything, but like, it certainly has less moral consideration than an animal, in my opinion.
But so do animals.
The animals feel pain, they suffer.
They feel a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, and we understand that very, very intrinsically. We understand that
Because of what we do. They don't suffer.
they don't suffer to the same extent that animals do.
Anyway, I think we're going around in circles.
Yeah, anyway,
Yay, that was great. That was fun.